dim the lights, raise the curtain, and start the previews. Welcome to the theater. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Josh. How's it going?
Welcome back. It is going great, pandemic great.
Yes.
Before we were recording, I said something to you, and I want to say it again here. You were the very first guest on this show.
I could not think of a higher honor.
Really? I could
Well,
think of like several.
sure I could. Uh,
Um, I got I got a prize for selling the most wrapping paper in middle school, and that was pretty high. I should say my parents got that. I didn't sell anything, but I
no,
got to enjoy the gift certificate that I got from it.
that's awesome.
No, I shouldn't put myself down. That's terrible. I don't want to self-shame myself. But welcome back. I'm glad to have you back.
Me too. I'm glad to be back.
Let's jump in. So I have started asking people this officially, but I'm curious to know we did your why therapy on the last episode you were on. You
Hmm.
can, listeners can check in the archives. It's episode number 1. Before you got into like therapy as a career or even therapy as your education, did you have any idea what it was, any kind of concept of it? And what was that?
Um, I'd say it was a mixture of what I saw in films, what I saw in the media, but then also a blend of kind of what, my dad is a professor and did marriage counseling and counseling with students. And so I would see students come over, not necessarily for counseling, but kind of to live life, you know, um, and
Your
just
dad, who is basically my dad, who
right,
I have known since I was 17.
right.
Yeah.
So, I know there was obviously like the professional counseling, you go to the office, they take notes, they analyze you, but then also the relational side of things that I was able to see in a more I don't want to say family dynamic, but almost familial, right? Like we care about these people, we're going to help them, they're important to us. And so I think my idea of therapy was kind of a hybrid blend of let's let's address some issues that's going on in people's lives and let's be there to support them.
Do you think that that was like closer to, I would say, what a church counseling kind of idea is?
Yeah, probably that probably rings pretty true. That makes
Hmm.
sense. Yeah.
It's, I would say that like something that I guess clinical and church kind of has in common, both would say are relational.
Hmm.
But the therapeutic relationship in clinical counseling is very different
Very.
than a relationship that you would establish in like church counseling.
Right.
Um, so you got a lot of what you thought therapy or counseling was, probably closer to counseling from watching your dad do what he does.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how has your idea of what counseling is changed since getting educated in?
Yeah. Uh, I mean, it's obviously a huge shift, and it's even something that goes into my like in my informed consent, right? Like, what does our relationship look like in this therapeutic relationship, right? I'm not here to tell you what to do with your life. That's not my agenda. My agenda is for us to partner together and for you to come up with your goals and the things that you're wanting to work or shift or change in your life, outside of the counseling session. Like, it goes back to your privacy, it goes back to your confidentiality. And so when I see you in the mall, relational non-counselor Rachel would love to say hey to you, would love to be like, hey, how's it going, hope you're having a great day.
Mhm.
but but the foundation of clinical counseling goes back to my ethical foundation, right? The do no harm, the autonomy, the beneficence, and things like that, right? Like those things are important to us clinical counselors, whereas maybe a non-clinical person maybe doesn't have the same
Yeah.
boundaries or ethics or foundation on that.
And all of that stuff is strictly for the protection of the client. Like, that is not because we are trying to position ourselves in a hierarchy or try to, pretend we're celebrities and don't make eye contact or
Right.
something like that. Like, all of that stuff has been put in place because there is a power dynamic at play
Absolutely.
in therapy, and it's easy to take advantage of that. And so those kinds of things have been put in place by governing bodies and states. Like in Tennessee, the ethics that you're governed by are the law. Like Tennessee just said, you follow the ethics, we'll make those the laws. So like in Tennessee, that line between is it ethical versus is it illegal is pretty hard because they're the same,
Yeah,
but all of that is to make sure that clients are protected and get cared
absolutely.
for the way they need to be.
Yeah,
So I mean, like, it sounds like what you're saying is the change between your pre-education concept and post has been structure and, I guess, ethics and rules and
yeah. And I think there's still, obviously to be authentic with your clients, right? Like you have to be able to, and I think this goes into the very beginning of how you present yourself, how you inform your clients of who you are, right? Like I want to be authentic with you as I can be. However, this counseling session is not about me, right? Like it is important for the clients to feel, that positive regard, right? But also know
you're
that,
hitting me with all these grad school buzzwords. I love it.
right? Yeah, hey, when you teach and you're inundated with it, it's right there on the forefront of your mind.
Mhm.
Um, but those things are important, and I also think I see myself as by no means like a life coach, right? But if you think about the metaphor of being a coach, you're analyzing, you're strategizing different plays and players and your strengths and your weaknesses, and you're the one along with your players and your other coaches are coming up with a game plan, right? Like how are you going to attack these different issues against the team on Friday night, right? The coach does not go in and play. I don't go in and play in my client's life,
Mhm.
but I'm there to help coach and give suggestions, give encouragement. But I'm not doing life with them like how I saw my dad invite college students over to our house all the time, right?
Yeah.
Like those better boundaries, and it is, you're right, it's different on a
Well, but
clinical.
that's not to say, it's not that your dad didn't have boundaries. Your dad is
Right,
not a
right,
therapist or a counselor, so
correct,
he's not under those same expectations that we are.
right, absolutely.
Um, yeah. So I guess since we don't have to worry about the why therapy, since you were on, quite a few things have happened in your life.
Yes, yes, it has been an eventful 2 years. I graduated, I got my doctorate, I got engaged the same day. It was great. We
The
got,
same day? I don't know if I knew that.
yeah, it was my, graduation party as a ruse, you know. Uh and he proposed, and that was a lot of fun. And then I started I think the last time I was maybe about to start a new job, or maybe I just started it, but I'm director of career services at LeTourneau University. I'm still seeing a small caseload. I see about 10 clients, 10 to 12.
Is that a part of that job, or is that like a private
That's separate.
practice kind of thing? Okay.
That's separate, right? So I see a lot of teenagers and young adults. A lot of times it's for you know self-worth, self-esteem, anxiety, depression, trauma related situations. I got trained in EMDR and have really enjoyed using that with clients, and working towards that healing and that growth. Let's see, I think I said I got married last November, and um, sometimes it can be that blessing and a curse, right? Like I kind of I after the wedding, probably after the honeymoon, after, we got married in November, went on a honeymoon that next week, came back and had school still in session for like what, 2 more weeks. But then after that, I like crashed and burned, right? Like I was like sick and tired. And I was like, I think my body is just worn out because I've been going for the last 3 years with this doctorate and working full time. And so we went on a good long vacation. We went out to see my family in South Carolina. We went out to Phoenix, Arizona to see the Tigers play. That also then, I had to take some time to myself and just relax.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, I think you earned it after the after
Thank
the sprint that you had and everything that you've accomplished.
thank you. Yeah.
Um, I mean, I think that something similar happened to me without the rest at the end, like getting the master's, like 2017, still doing full time class, clinical internship hits,
Mhm.
working part time, which at the company I was working at, part time was 37 hours. We also planned our own wedding. So all four of those things happening at the same time. And then once we got hitched and did the honeymoon, I was like 3 days into the honeymoon before I unclenched. I was like, I don't know how to work without a schedule and a to-do list as a
Yeah.
person. I don't know how
Yeah.
to do that. So
Yeah.
when we got back, it was right back to all of the previously mentioned things except for the planning of the wedding.
Yeah.
Um, and even now, I feel like I'm still learning how to not run as hard as I can all the time.
Mhm. Yeah. I That's a good way to phrase it.
Yeah. Maybe a good way to Frasier. Maybe you could TM that.
Yes,
That could
yes.
be a part of your talk show. Well, let's talk about a movie.
Yeah, let's do it.
What movie did you bring for us to talk about today?
I brought the Amazon Studios Brittany Runs a Marathon.
Brittany. So you like wrote me, I don't even know, like sometime early this year or last year saying like, hey,
Mhm.
if I can come on again, I got the movie. It's gonna be this.
Yeah, I loved it.
And I don't know if I had seen it. I knew what it was at that point. I don't know if I'd seen the trailer or whatever. We watched it a couple of weeks ago, I wanna
Uh-huh.
say, something like that. And I am of like 3 or 4 different minds about this movie. Like, I was thinking because of Jillian Bell that it was gonna be something like 22 Jump Street or Workaholics or
Right,
something like that, and it is for the first 5 minutes, maybe
right,
5 minutes,
right.
and not after that.
No, it
Yeah.
it I I thought this movie, and I know you have some questions, but I'll kind of even jump ahead if you don't mind just for a second. Like
Go right ahead.
for me, I think I personally, on some levels, like really resonated with Brittany's character, and yet I saw a lot of some past clients in there. But here's the thing, I also saw a lot of like my friends like in this movie. Like maybe not current friends, but like past friends or past, you know, friends who struggled with their purpose and their worth and their value, or like getting kind of tossed about in the sea of life, so to say, and struggling to find their way back. And
Hmm.
I don't know, I really enjoyed this movie. Like I thought it had some good takeaways.
Yeah. So, I mean, my next question was going to be why you picked it, but I
Right.
mean, that's kind of it.
Yeah.
Um, so what is it about this movie that you think, I don't know, that you think could help folks that you want to talk about? Like, because
Yeah.
I think my two minds about the movie stems from it is a movie that shows a character, I guess, developing passion and I don't want to say taking control, but I guess taking control of her life.
Yeah.
Also, it's sometimes making terrible decisions. And I would say is surrounded by the worst people. Like, not for the whole movie,
Right.
but certainly for a lot of it.
Right. I think to me the kind of theme of resilience and grit, right? Those are good key buzzwords, right?
Yeah.
You know, education land still loves grit.
To me, grit indicates I'm not going to pay attention to how I feel or what I feel like my inner voice is telling me. I'm going to push through no matter what. That's what grit, and that might be my thing. That might be the connotation that I have. So
Mhm.
to me, that's always meant I've got to compartmentalize. I've got to cut something off. I can't be a fully whole and integrated person.
Mhm.
I've got to set my perseverance and determination and just go.
Yeah. Um so for us in the education world, right? Like when we talk about students persisting and their grit and their resilience, I feel like you see Brittany's character develop a stronger mindset, right? Of what she can do, what she can't do. And there were points in the movies where it becomes a little unhealthy, right? Like a little maybe very focused on a certain number on a scale, right? Like
Mhm.
her original goal was to run the New York City Marathon. She did get, some feedback from her doctor of trying to lose weight, but the goal really became to run the marathon. And even that first day when she starts running, her mantra is one block, right? That's all she needs to do is one block. And she has the determination and the fortitude. We don't know if she ran more than one block, right? That first time she ran, but that was her mindset, was to do one block. And she comes back and she looks a hot mess, right? Like she's not used to running. And she even, like, I liked how the camera angles were like she's running and these people are coming and they're not getting out of her way. And that's another, I think, kind of subtle theme of people didn't maybe she didn't feel noticed, right? She didn't feel valued. She didn't feel like people wouldn't hold the the subway for her, right? Because maybe of her appearance, right? Or but as the movie goes on, you know, it's more so about her moving forward, not so much about what other people think or their perceptions of her. Like I think she gets to a point where she's running for her,
Mhm.
right? And she's able to find her passion and her worth had been mixed up in some things that were really external and not about really who she was. Um, but I feel like her focus and her passion and eventually having those positive people in her life to support her helped her help her kind of become the person she really wanted to be,
Yeah.
or have the life that she was content to have, you know?
Let me ask you this. Um, when she starts her transformation journey, when she starts her growth journey, she's, I think, starting. So she goes to that doctor to try to get Adderall.
Right.
And then he ends up recommending that she lose 45 to 60 pounds or something
Yeah.
like that. And
A
she says
small
that,
Siberian husky.
yeah, you want me to remove a sled dog from my body.
Right.
So she starts running. At the beginning, is she motivated by the scale? Because she just lost her job. So is it just the weight?
I think, well, possibly yes, but think of, she was like gonna go to the gym, right? And the gym cost
$1
100,
billion, yeah.
yeah, so much money, and she doesn't have money. So she's already seen Moneybags Martha out there running. And so running, what does that cost you? Nothing, right? So could it be a way to accomplish several different things on that to-do list? Sure.
Here's like the question that I want to get at. How is running to lose weight different than running for quote unquote her own reasons, like at the end? Like, it seems like both are internal. It seems
Mhm.
like both are self-motivated. It seems like both are this like intrinsic, it's coming from within, I've got my own reasons kind of thing.
Do you think weight is an intrinsic, more intrinsic?
Well, that's what I'm asking about.
Okay. So I think initially it starts outwardly, right? Because we live in a society where so much is based on our how we look, our appearance, right? And people in the movie would talk about like, Brittany, you're the funniest person I know, right? Like, and so she gets put into this kind of box of the chubby funny girl, right? And she's obviously very smart, witty, has a wonderful like personality and is caring. And it even goes back to later at the end of the movie when her brother-in-law is talking to her about how um, she makes people laugh because
Mhm.
she's caring. It's not just to make people laugh, but it's coming from a positive, caring nature. um, but I think why I liked this part is because I think a lot of things that start maybe as I want to look a certain way. We think how we look, at least I'll speak for myself or like a woman maybe, how we look, we think will automatically feel better about ourselves on a holistic level. But how we look is just one aspect of who we are holistically, right?
Mhm.
And so, what may have started as like a one tracked kind of mind to lose weight helped her move in a direction of loving herself, valuing herself, looking at her life from a more holistic standpoint. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And I wonder if, and we'll probably end up talking about this, but like, where does that track switch happen?
Mhm.
Because I think that starting that journey on kind of a, all right, I don't really like how people consider me or treat me. The doctor said I got to lose weight, you know. So maybe thinking, okay, so losing weight will give me a new identity. It'll
Mm.
give me a new type of way to relate to people. I kind of wonder if the track switch happens when you hit a wall going down that road. And
Mhm.
then the choice becomes, well, do I stick with this road even though it's clearly not giving me what I want, or do I find something different?
Right. And I think I would agree with that. I think what comes to mind is when she gets like she doesn't get in the lottery for the marathon, and her friends pull some money together, and her reaction is she doesn't want the money, right? Like she wants to do this on her own. um I think at times she kind of got defensive and like pushed that money back from her friends, right? And I think a lot of times when we're trying to do new things, be maybe be better, more mindful about things, like we're going to come into situations where we have opportunities to like revert back to old behaviors, right? And in this situation, I feel like she got kind of old Brittany to react. And maybe there was a pride part of it that she wanted to do this on her own. Or I also kind of thought maybe she felt left out again,
Mhm.
that she wasn't the one who got picked, but her other two friends, they were worthy or good enough or had the
Mhm.
money or whatever. And so that triggered that response.
I wonder if it was this kind of like cold water to the face wake up call about vulnerability, in the sense of, in that moment, she realized, I need them.
Yeah.
And that is something that is extremely uncomfortable for her. And
Yeah.
like we talked earlier about how she would use humor to both like attract people
Engage and deflect. Right.
and then
Yeah.
push them away when they got a little too close. And so in that moment, it was this, maybe it was she realized that she needed them, or maybe it was something even like, even when I don't ask, they give.
Mm-hmm.
They care about me that much. And holy
Yeah.
cow, that's for real.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great insight of like, we know, I think Brittany knew deep down she needed people, right? And she wanted that support and that camaraderie, but it was a very, very tough pill to swallow, you
Mhm.
know?
It's uncomfortable because she'd
Yeah.
been kind of doing it on her own for a while.
Yeah.
But I think what's interesting about that is like, I think when a person's lonely, it's pretty easy for them to realize that they want people. What's
But how
interesting
do we
is,
go about it then, right? Like,
or what I'm thinking is, how do you get to the place where you realize it's okay to need people?
yeah.
To shift from that, like, I want people, but then you get in the mix, you get in the real relational mix, and you realize like relationship isn't an on-demand thing.
Right.
And in that moment, maybe it was like this switch in her head from, well, I've wanted people for so long, but now I realize I need them. And sometimes it's not even a matter of need. It's a matter of they just love me and they want to give to me because of that.
Yeah. And that puts people in a think about, if you have struggled with your worth and your value, but other people are trying to show you, hey, you are worthwhile, you are valuable. um that's a tough kind of conflict, right? Of like what you've believed, that kind of, we go to core beliefs, right? And if you believe truly deep down that you're insignificant or you're not worthwhile, that you really are going to find those things that almost attract that belief even more so, right? Like, or repel the positive things that try to combat that negative belief, right? It's the
Yeah.
magnets, right?
Or you
What we're
go to
attracting.
like, and Leanne has like called me out on this in real life several times. You go to like confirmation bias, where you
Yeah.
have this core belief and it's either you seek out, or it's like your brain filters out things that don't confirm the thing that you believe.
Right.
So you're just on the hunt for that thing all the time.
Yeah, exactly. You've been trained to see it and look for it.
Yeah. And I think, and this is coming to me right now too, because I think that I used to operate in this sense too, kind of like a capitalistic or a meritocracy understanding of relationship, where like I gotta earn something from you,
Mhm.
or like it's a transactional kind of thing.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden when you introduce like real love, real care, and grace into it, like her friends aren't getting anything out of paying for
Right.
her into the race, other
Right.
than her presence with them as they run, which really for them that was enough. And I think it kind of like short circuited her brain to like receive this
Yeah.
gift out of, I wouldn't say it's out of nowhere, like they've been aiming for this, but
Yeah, this
like,
is their goal.
yeah, but like to receive this gift in what she might consider to be is an unearned way.
Yeah. I also wonder if there was a little bit of kind of realization, like, now let me also clarify, I am not a runner, okay? Like, if something's chasing me, maybe I'll run.
Yeah, yeah, I'm at the
But
top of the food chain, I don't need to run.
but like, running is a very, in my opinion, a very it can be a group activity, but at the end of the day, it is an individualized sport, right? Or some people would say activity, but we'll go with sport, right? And so Brittany was the one who initiated the run, right? Like it's her story. She said, I'm going to do one block, right? Brittany put one foot in front of another. And so even though she joined a running group and found people to run with her and there was camaraderie and support in that, at the end of the day, Brittany still had to put one foot in front of another. And then she gets to a point where she can't, right? Like she has to either do it on her own, raise the money on her own, or accept her friend's money. And even maybe kind of like a punch to the gut, right? Of like, I can run as much as I want, but I couldn't get myself into this marathon. I couldn't win the lottery, right? And so just reinforcing that negative belief about yourself, or the fact that you do need these people.
So you think she had a shame flare up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. That's why she was so, like, her response was
Mm-hmm.
so aggressive and so putting that stiff arm up, right? Like, not the Brittany you had seen for the past probably 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've talked on the show a lot about Chip Dodd's book, The Voice of the Heart. He kind of subscribes to this. There's 8 core feelings that kind of act as buckets, thousands of emotions. Any emotion can be categorized into a bucket. Each feeling has a gift. If you lean into it, if you understand the feeling, you receive a gift from it. If you kind of push it away, deny it, you operate in an impaired state of the feeling. So shame, that feeling, the message of shame is, I have limitations. We feel
Yeah.
shame when we hit up against our limitations. And so healthy shame, the gift that you receive from it, if you lean into and you understand your shame, you engage it, is
Yeah.
you receive humility, which leads to relationship.
Okay.
And the impaired version, the impairment is toxic shame. Toxic shame is that negative self-talk. It's that
Right.
crapping all over yourself. I'm worthless. I'm a dog. So like in that moment, let's say that she kind of recognized her shame. I have limitations, be it financial limitations, be
Mm-hmm.
it, I guess, like luck or opportunity
Right.
limitations, like
Opportunity.
whatever the lottery system kind of worked as. But if she could have like kind of caught that and went, oh, okay, so I'm recognizing I have limitations. So man, this is really tough. I hate having limitations. I hate having to receive from others. But then like encountering that, maybe she could have received that humility, leaned in, gotten that relationship. Thank you so much, guys. I I feel just so lucky. I also feel like I want to make sure I show you I appreciate this. Let me pay you back after this is over,
Yeah.
yada, yada. But instead, that impaired state, that toxic shame. So like shame's modus operandi is isolation. It's to push people away. It's to kind
Yeah.
of like circle you off from the flock and like tell you you're the only one. You're specially broken. Like nobody else will understand and nobody else is as bad as you. And that seems like I know that when I get those kinds of flare ups, I do the same thing. I shut down. I push people
Mm-hmm.
away. Like,
Yeah.
man.
And we would rather, I don't know if it's a matter of rather, but like, that gives us a little bit of power, right? Like, I talk to people all the time about the power within you and like what's within your control. And so when that shame kind of flares up and you're pushing against it, you momentarily feel like you've gained your control back, right? You've gained your power, that you're in control. You're going to push people away and this is on you. But it's really counterproductive,
Yeah. Cause
right?
what do you want more? Do you want power? Do you want relationship?
Connection. Yeah.
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 And what's weird is I think that they're in those moments, and I think this is a human thing. We go into autopilot. So it's not like in our head we're weighing those things out.
Right.
Well, let me write a pros and cons list in my head and see which option benefits me more.
Mm-hmm.
we just kick into what I call default mode, which is typically like whatever our attachment style is that we've like
Absolutely.
grown up with. And so
Yeah.
like, seems like Brittany's probably an avoidant attachment type person. I identify
Yeah.
with that. That's me too. So, she gets into those moments where like it's a vulnerability flare up, it's a shame flare up, and all of a sudden, and the avoidant attachment is like formed. Its kind of origin is, I don't know if I can depend on you to comfort me or not regularly. And so
Mm.
because of that, I don't want you to see me hurting.
Right.
And then when you show back up, I don't want you to see me like glad,
Right.
because I can't depend on you.
Yeah. I agree. I think I
So it's
think
a front.
Brittany, yeah, it's I think Brittany was so used to being in that kind of attachment style, and as she started this marathon journey, she started learning new things about herself, seeing herself differently. But like you said, sometimes we get that splash of cold water and it puts us
Yeah.
back into previous negative beliefs or behaviors.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting too is that she had such a secure attachment to her brother-in-law and her
Yeah.
sister. So I wonder if that kind of manifests from, I don't remember like how old, like where in the story her dad like died,
Yeah, I don't either, to be honest.
but maybe it was something like that. Like, she, because I don't think that you have to be like unhealthy or, uh, I guess I just unhealthy. I'll stick with that, to have, an attachment style that's not secure.
Yeah.
It could just be coming from hurt. It could be coming from trauma. It could be coming from any number of those things. And even if her dad died when she was a little kid, it would have definitely done it. But even if her dad died when she was in her early 20s,
Yeah.
grief is a tricky,
Yeah.
high difficulty thing to handle.
It's not linear.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of like Russell Brand's book Recovery. He talks about, when he's talking through step 4, he had to put a resentment on his list towards his mom because she had the nerve to die of cancer.
Mm.
And he was holding that against her when he was working through his 12 steps.
Yeah.
Because you left me. How could you do that?
Yeah.
Because he loved her so much. And it was just holding on to all of the feelings he had about it.
Yeah. Interesting. I've not read that book, but that sounds really good.
At the beginning, I would actually say she reminded me a lot of me in the past. And you're probably, other than like Todd, the only guest that was actually around long enough ago. But like I had the same like inability to do intimacy, and used humor as I'm going to pull you in with it, and then I'm going to push you away as soon as I reach my level of tolerance, like ceiling of tolerance for closeness. I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna, and it wasn't until, a lot of therapeutic work where I could get around that. I'm not funny at all now, which I
No,
think is,
such a dud.
um, but it's interesting that like, even though the purpose of protection from intimacy is the same at the beginning and at that moment, the method of, I guess, pushing people away was different.
Yeah. And the part for me, I think that there are two parts where it talks about um where she has to go back to Philly to kind of recoup and heal from a sprain or a tear or something. Um and she's very hateful and starts drinking more and treats people really ugly at
Mhm.
a birthday party, and then has this conversation with her brother-in-law, who served as her father figure for a while,
Yeah,
and he
yeah.
talks
It's
about.
so this was at like, it's her sister's house, and it's a party where a friend
Mhm.
who had, I think a friend of her sister's, had lost a lot of weight, right?
N- no,
It had
she.
something to do, something triggered her in that moment. I mean, this is like one of the only times I didn't watch the movie right before I recorded.
It's okay.
So I'm having trouble remembering.
A friend of theirs comes to the party, and he is with a girl who is a plus size woman. And she basically, Brittany was like, how are you two together? Right? You know, this is an odd matchup, right? Like she says those kind of hateful things. And she later, you know, apologizes and sends the girl flowers. And the girl responds about, I think about my body every day, but at some point I had to choose to focus on what I have and my happiness, as opposed to, I mean, she doesn't say it in this part, but this is how I resonated of like, she has to make a daily choice to choose happiness and contentment with who she is, not just what she looks like, which
Hmm.
I think is a struggle for not just women, but for men as well, or anyone who's human.
Yeah.
But so that part where there was that part, another part when she sits and talks with, you know, her brother-in-law about, he says, you know, if people want to support you, let them. And I thought about that phrase for a while. And whereas I think there is some truth in that, I also think, you know, you have to be mindful, you know, and how you define support and what that looks like and what you need may look different. You know, how someone wants to support you may not be exactly what you need. And then you have to then take responsibility and ownership to communicate that to that person and say, like, this is not what I need at the time. I appreciate, you know, X, Y, and Z, but right now I need
Yeah.
type of support.
Which I think it's impossible to do that without a level of intimacy with yourself, like,
Sure.
without knowing yourself well enough and being in touch with your own feelings to be able to understand what you need.
Yeah.
And I think that what's also a danger in that is, developing hardline rules, which is oftentimes a response to trauma.
Hmm.
So, like, you know, if Brittany felt hurt or traumatized in the past and developed a worldview of, I'll never let people get close to me again, I'll never do X, Y, or Z, and then
Right.
applied that to every relationship she had after that, you
Hmm.
know, that is something that's going to affect her entire life. And so I felt like what her brother-in-law was saying to her into that moment was, you got to let people in, not
Yeah.
like you got to let people give you money, or you got to let people drive you to the airport when you got an early flight, or you got to let people do X, Y, or Z, but like, you know, listen, you need relationships, you need people to care for and about you, and that's impossible unless you let them.
Yeah. I agree. And that letting people in, I think, is seen so clearly at the end when she's running the race and like she's starting to struggle, right? I mean, I would struggle
Mhm.
after a mile, I'm not even gonna lie, but she's at mile 22 or somewhere around there, which sounds awful.
Yeah.
But she does it, and then she gets to a point where Seth and his husband and kids are there and they're cheering for her. And then I always call her Moneybags Martha. I know that's not her name, but that's that's
But
what's
but when you know, sorry for the olive branch, when she like tries to do something nice for her, she's like, "Remember, I'm Moneybags Mart." Like, she
right,
knows that's what Brittany called her.
right. But you know, she's there along the way rooting her on, and then Jern is there at the very end, like, I love you, right? Like, you know, and it's just so, I mean, I felt empowered. I was like, I'm gonna go run. Not really, but I could if I wanted to, right? But like, I think I think there are those people, if you allow people to come in a little bit, you may be surprised to see who shows up, right? Like you if you have this mindset of like negativity and like, I'm not good enough or I'm not worthwhile, you keep those guards up, you're not allowing people in. But if you're able to get to a place where you can kind of switch things up, you may be really pleasantly surprised to see who's at your finish line.
That's beautiful. That's
Thank
like
you.
the tagline to that needs to be on the poster of the movie.
Oh, well, I'll send them an email.
I mean, I think you're right because and this is speaking from experience as a person who wrote this message and lived according to it. If you either convince yourself that you are unlovable or unworthy, and that causes you to reject intimacy with others, or
Mhm,
if you're so afraid of getting hurt that you choose to not engage, you're ultimately missing out on a part of your humanity. And I am not saying that as somebody who thinks you're doing it, you are a wrong person or you're broken if you're making those choices, because
mhm,
I made those choices in the past, not because I
right.
was consciously doing it, but because I didn't know any better. But what I will say is, like, we're hardwired as people for relationship.
Yes.
And I think I said this like 2 weeks ago in the show, but to, one kind of response to fear of intimacy is I'm going to be independent. Like, I don't need anybody. I'm going to do it on my own. Another response could be I'm going to be completely dependent. I can't do it without you. And
Mhm,
really, that sweet spot where relationship can kind of flow freely. And I think what I would, in relationships, I think that the coolest thing that happens when it's healthy is that you actually are able to be more yourself in a healthy
mhm,
relationship than you
mhm.
were outside of it. And that's
Yeah.
not to say you got to find a relationship to get there, but that's to say that, like, you have a person who accepts you as you are. And so just because of
Our fur babies, we gotta we gotta give some of that to ourselves, and
yeah.
we gotta allow other people in to be there to show up, you know?
You know what's interesting about bringing in like pets is it's another example of how easy it is sometimes to offer something to others that we don't offer to ourselves. And I think that what's really on display with Brittany's character in the movie is when I don't know if she hated herself, but she did not have high regard for herself.
Mhm.
And when you, however you want to phrase it, hate yourself or don't like yourself or whatever, it is very, very easy to reject intimacy with others, because what ends up happening is when you hate yourself and somebody else expresses an interest in you or expresses care in you, you think to yourself, well, I know what and who I am. So if
Right,
you are expressing interest or care for me, what kind of a jerk are you?
right. Yeah,
Uh, so it ends up kind of like spider webbing out to like
yeah.
everybody.
And it was funny, like, I mean, it was kind of funny, there's a mild humor line in the film, but when she talks about, like, how she wanted to try to adopt a dog, and they told her that, "Sorry, you won't be a good home for a dog," and, like, adding that on top of not having finances or a place to live, right? But then at the end, she's able to get her own place. You see her feeding a dog, right? Like, things look different. And I think a lot of it is yes, she was able to change some things in her life, but she had support, right? Like, she had a strong supporting cast. Brittany had to do the work, a lot of it on her own, but she had people there supporting her along the way, encouraging her. And I think that it goes back to what you said, like, we are relational beings, even the most introverted person needs someone. Hi, I'm Josh Drews. Um, um and that can look different for everyone, but when we isolate ourselves and we put ourselves into kind of what you're saying, that self-loathing mindset, it's going to put that filter over everything, and we're not going to be able to make the moves we really truly want to make, because we're going to doubt ourselves, and we're going to feel stuck, and we're going to feel not good enough, and it just is that rinse and repeat cycle we get stuck in, you
Yeah.
know.
And sometimes you need other people to grab you by the shoulders and shake you and say, "What is going on? This is
Right.
not true." I think that something that I really like about the movie that I didn't realize until you were talking just now is this metaphor of a marathon.
Mhm.
And I think that one of the reasons why people, I don't know, get stuck when they want to change or convince themselves, why should I bother?
Right.
Is because people know they need to make a change, but they want all of the change to happen at once. And so they figure, well, if I'm at letter A and I know I need to get to letter Z, if I can't make that in one jump, why should I bother?
Right.
And I think to a certain degree, she had a similar thought at the beginning.
Yeah.
You have this like visualization of her growth journey, which is her training and her running the marathon. Like, change in your life is not a matter of just deciding and then boom, it happens.
Right.
I mean, I suppose that for some things it could be, but like I tell clients all the time that are trying to get sober, recovery is not just you put, you get a new phone or you get a new car. It's not one decision that does it. It is a lifestyle change. You change how you live your life, and that is not easy, and it's not a short, time period that you do that in.
Oh, yeah, that's excellent. I 100% agree, and I think think about the resistance and the determination you have to run a marathon, right? Like there's so much that goes into that. Um and that kind of metaphor, the theme in the movie is Brittany's long-term change,
Yeah.
right? And that's an excellent point. Um
Well, because I think sometimes we get down or discouraged because of the length of time that it's gonna take.
yeah,
And I don't even remember who said this quote. I remember seeing it a long time ago, and that was like, "Never let the length of time that it takes to do something stop you from doing it because the time's gonna pass anyway."
right. I love it. I've
Yeah.
never heard it, but I love it.
Um, Let me ask you about the worst people in the movie. Her friend, I think Molly, and her boyfriend. I think her name was Molly. Yes. Um, oh, was it
Terrence
Molly?
was the boyfriend's name. I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it
Yeah.
wasn't Molly. Maybe it was Gretchen. Whoever her roommate was at the beginning. Yeah, it was Gretchen.
You just listed like Mean Girls characters, insecure characters, all great movies.
Her friend is not even low key passive aggressive and hateful.
Right.
Her friend is the worst. I mean, like, starting at the beginning when she says, "I wanna make a change. I'm gonna, like, I think she even just asks her, "Would you like to go for a run with me?" And she goes, "Oh, you know how if I do too much cardio, I get too skinny too fast."
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, she's the worst. Which makes me think, why do we keep people around like that?
Ooh,
Why? Like, if we have people who continually are fake friends, right? Or
toxic.
yeah, and maybe we have fun when we like go out and drink, but that's it, right? Like there's no depth, there's nothing substantial. And she eventually kind of calls her on it. Brittany does, of like everything is just for social media and likes, and what kind of life is that? It's not real, it's not authentic. But I think people keep those kind of toxic people around because sometimes people have just accepted that's what they deserve, and that's not the case, right? Like,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I think part of it too is I'm so scared of being alone that I'll take whatever I can get, even if it's something terrible and hurtful.
Yeah.
Um, I I was reading this morning about co-addiction, and it talked about how, there's this element of denial in it, and it's all self-preservation.
Mhm.
I'm so afraid of facing the truth and feeling the hurt. I'm going to deny that there's a problem, and I am going to ignore all of these things that I'm seeing because I'm so afraid of what acknowledging the truth could be. And I
Mhm.
think that's something similar in it's maybe happening in Brittany and Gretchen's relationship. It's like Brittany already feels really, really alone, but
Yeah.
at least she has a roommate, even if her roommate treats her like garbage, like
Right.
actual human garbage.
Well, and think about the other people who maybe don't treat Brittany the best. It just becomes this cycle of like fear of being alone, thinking this is what I'm good enough or not good enough for, right? Like this is better than nothing, right?
Mhm.
And so I'm just going to accept what is. Um and you know, the it doesn't give you a ton of like what what happened to Brittany, but she moved from Philly to do this advertising marketing stuff that something went wrong. Like it didn't end well. And so what do you do when your dreams and your life gets crushed, right? Like where do you go? What do you do? How do you continue to move forward? And think about it. If you don't know how to swim really well and you get tossed into the deep end, you're gonna feel like you're floundering or drowning, and
Some good Southern pronunciation there.
drowning. Yes,
Drowning.
yes, and you know, why not focus on the things that seem fun when your life is in the shitter? Can I
Yeah.
come on here? Sorry, I
Yeah,
just
sure.
cool.
Yeah. Um, she before she went to New York, where was she? Was she in Philly?
Hmm.
So I know that she felt really close with her brother-in-law.
Hmm.
So it wasn't as if she couldn't do intimacy at all before she got there.
Yeah.
So if it's not, I don't know how to do relationships. So I'm going to look for all of these things to distract me. What is it when tragedy strikes, when tough times come, when suffering happens,
Mhm.
that makes her kind of close herself off and become this superficial kind of person?
Yeah. I mean, think about when you get hurt, right? Like you lose this she, whatever the internship or the job was, it ended poorly, right? And even in like career counseling, when I talk to people who've lost jobs, I mean, how painful that is. You
Mhm.
invest your time, your energy, your emotions into something you feel passionate about,
Your identity gets caught up in it.
and then you're disposable,
Yeah.
right? You are you're a dispensable crewman number 5, right? Like you don't get the recognition, you don't get I mean, your whole life goes down the tubes, and at least a lot of people have talked to me about that and how they feel in terms of when they've lost their jobs. But sorry, my dog's in the background. But
He's a good boy. It's okay.
most of the time. But it takes such a toll on your self-esteem, on your confidence, and on your self-worth when something big and tragic happens. And so in order to keep that kind of self-preservation, how are we going to move forward? We're just going to have fun. We're going to have a good time. We're not going to take life too seriously, because look what happened when I took life seriously and I was really committed to this job and this industry and this purpose in life. It crapped on me.
Yeah.
So why would I take anything else seriously?
So it's fear, but it's
Mm,
also shame.
mhm.
And I think it's the fear of, when I put my whole self into it and it didn't work out, that was so
Yeah,
painful. If I put myself into anything again, there's that chance of that happening, and I don't want it to happen. The shame comes in when you talk about the identity piece,
right.
because she let herself, and we can have a whole nother discussion about how, I don't want to say healthy, but how effective it is to like absorb what you do as a part of your identity.
Mhm.
Because I know that, when I was 27 and got fired from a church, like my identity was that of youth pastor. And then when I wasn't a youth pastor anymore, I had this existential crisis of like, who am I? Not what am I,
Yeah,
but like, who am I?
yeah,
And so, when that happens, it's almost like you don't know how to talk to people, because the biggest thing in your life is a failure at the
yeah,
moment.
yeah,
And you are so terrified of saying, I am a failure, which you're not. Objectively, you're not a failure. You can fail at a thing, but you're not a failure.
right.
Failure is a verb, it's not a noun.
Yeah,
Well, failure is a noun, but failing is a verb.
right.
I did not major in English.
Mm.
I barely speak it. But yeah, I mean, I get that. I get that now. It's fear and it's shame, and shame's modus operandi is isolation. Like shame is going to tell you you are a special kind of broken and
Right,
nobody else will understand.
right.
Nobody else would struggle with this, because a real fill in the blank, a real adult, a real man, a real woman, a real Christian, a real teacher, a real whatever
Yeah.
would not, this wouldn't happen to them.
Mhm,
And so you must not be a
mhm.
real blah, blah, blah.
Right. Yeah. It's it's so hard to think about like we go back to like basic cognitive behavioral, like feelings are not facts, right? They're not facts, but they're there for a reason,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Oh, I say to clients all the time, oh, they'll say something like, well, it doesn't make sense that I feel this way. And I say, oh, you're trying to make sense of feelings.
Right.
Feelings aren't logical. Like they come from different parts of your brain.
Yeah. Yeah. And and the ones that are uncomfortable and we don't like dealing with are often some of the loudest ones, right? They
Mhm.
are deafening. And so and that's when I feel like if you have some of those people in your corner, you have to be a bit vulnerable and share those and talk them out and have conversations and allow people to speak health and positivity and maybe not even positivity but just more non-judgmental, right, tones
Mhm.
or ideas to you of saying like, you're not a failure. Did this go exactly how you wanted it to go? No, but it doesn't mean you're done. It doesn't mean your story's at an end, right? Like I talk to a lot of I talk to a lot of young adults who feel just so overwhelmed in life. And a lot of it, I think, is stuff we can all grow and work through and develop in. Um, but a lot of people are missing those healthy relationships. A lot of people are missing support. A lot of people are only getting, likes on Instagram, or they're so involved with whatever social media is that it's hard to have like a real conversation, and that
Mm.
vulnerability and that authenticity gets covered up in you know fakeness of or fear, right? Like you don't want to present yourself as weak, right? I'm going to present myself as fun instead of weak. That
Mhm.
makes it easier and it's safer. And I think that's what Brittany kind of went through of, I'm going to fit into this role for a while and this is safer, this is easier. And we'll just keep rocking with this even though I don't like how I feel, right? Like I don't like this sense of um you know kind of pointlessness, helplessness, hopelessness. I don't like any of that, but I'm just going to keep rocking until something gives.
You know what's interesting is for a while it works for her.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that it's easy to lose sight of with people when they have maladaptive coping strategies is the reason that you get any kind of coping strategy is to make sense of the world around you and deal with the stressors of it.
Mhm.
And B, the reason why you stick with a coping strategy is because it works. Like
Mm.
there's a payoff.
Yeah.
Now, the payoff may not be long-term healthy or productive,
Right.
but people tend to keep a coping strategy until they find something better
Mm.
or until the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of changing.
Right. Yeah, we talk about like those secondary gains, right? Like someone may know that this relationship is unhealthy, right? But there's a secondary gain because you're not alone, right? Kind of with her and her roommate. Like I thought it was even symbolic of like she was painting her toes, right? Like
Mhm.
Brittany would do things for her, but when she asked her to show up to her 5K, she was nowhere to be found, you
Mhm.
know? And I think trying to create that visual of who wants to support you and who can support you well versus those toxic people. And I'm sure you've seen it in your clients past, whether it's friends or family members who are actually just really toxic, and it's hard to create those healthy boundaries because we feel so many different emotions and things that come up, and there's a history most of the time,
Mhm.
right? Like, well, this person has been my friend for so long.
Or like, what do you do when it's somebody in your family?
Right. Right. It's tough. Like
Yeah.
I don't and a lot of times, as a counselor, it's hard to sit here and say, well, you just need to I mean, not that we do this, right? But like we encourage our clients to value themselves and to create healthy boundaries, and like we want them to be as successful as they can be, and yet let's say, their mom or dad or stepmom or stepdad or whoever in their family is a huge hurdle to jump over. And sometimes I don't have I'm not in that situation. Who am I to
Yeah.
judge, right? Like I don't know. I've never been in that situation, but I think that's where I go back to for me trying to be a coach in some ways and to encourage and to just listen and to hear out how this makes my client feel and the stress or the anxiety or the shame or whatever it comes with. Um and just trying to go from there, and to have that counseling time be in a safe space for them to just share whatever they want to share.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think very rarely in life are there simple answers. No, easy answers.
Mhm.
Sometimes there are simple ones, but they're not
Right.
easy. Yeah. And I think that part of the work, anybody's work, is wrestling not just with what should I do, because a lot of times people know what they should do.
Yes.
It's wrestling with, do I believe I have what it takes to do what I
Mhm.
know that I should do?
Yeah.
And the beauty of, I think, this movie and especially its message is, even in times where it may be true you don't have what it takes to do what you want to do, by having relationships with others,
Mhm.
you don't have to do it alone.
Yeah.
And that courage that you need, but you can't quite find, gets multiplied because it gets produced in other people.
Yeah. I mean, think about like for those of us who love music, right? And how music can move us, right? It
I
can
like to
bring.
move it, move it.
Oh my gosh. I'm just gonna keep on talking. No, I'm just kidding. Who
Good,
doesn't like
because I'll go full King Julian in a second. I'm not afraid.
um, but you know, I've had some people tell me in the past, like, there's certain songs that they know they can listen to, and it just puts them in a better mindset, right? And those they don't have any like connect, like they're not friends with the artist, right? It's
Mhm.
not like they know the person who wrote the song, but there's something about them that speaks to them, that moves them in a positive, healthier mindset. And so to think about the influence of music in your life, think about how much, if you actually wanted to invite someone to sit at your table, metaphorically, right? Like who do you feel like you could invite to sit at your table? And if that person chooses to join you at your table of life, could that person not be a major positive influence if you allow that person to be?
Okay, I think I'm with you. So you're saying naturally we can be influenced by something that we don't have any kind of personal connection to,
Yes.
i.e., music.
Yes.
And so by developing a personal connection with people, how much more could that be magnified?
Correct.
Nice. Brittany eventually makes it to the marathon. It's not the round or the race or the whatever you want to call it that
It's
her
a year
friends are in.
later. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a year later because she gets injured. She has to
She
like
does.
heal.
Yeah.
But I think so. I I think it's just become it's my journey as a person. I think back to like when I was in college or right out of college, I was not a person who cried. And it wasn't like I tried to be tough, like I just didn't nothing came out.
Yeah.
And then like post, therapy, post jump starting all of the feelings. Now I cry at everything. Uh or I should say I tear up at everything.
Yeah.
Uh I still like if it's a movie, I don't really like although there's been a few doing the podcast that have like Rocket Man, I full on like ugly sob. Like,
Oh, it was so good.
oh my gosh, the scene at the end where he talks to his younger self in the circle at the 12 steps is what got when his younger self looked at him and said, "When are you gonna hug me?"
Yeah.
That's what
It was
just
so good.
boom. The movie Lion, that really got to me. Have you seen that?
Yeah, with the guy from Slumdog Millionaire.
Yes.
Yeah, that was really good.
Um, yeah.
He's
Also,
adopted.
yeah.
Yeah.
Also, About Time. Have you seen that?
Mm-mm.
It's on Netflix. Watch it as soon as you can.
Okay.
Like it's got Rachel McAdams in it. And it's great. It's great.
Okay.
Those got me. But so she makes it to the marathon or she's in the marathon, she's running it. And as she's running at different points in the race, her friends are like on the sideline, leaning out, cheering her on.
Oh yeah, that got me.
Oh yeah, definitely teared up because it's kind of this and I don't know what happened in between the first race and the second, if she didn't talk to them or if she ghosted them or whatever it was, but it's just kind of this beautiful moment of like, hey, you're my people. I don't care if you got weird that we tried to pay for you to come into the race. I love you. I'm
Right.
here for you.
Yeah.
Like you don't I remember at our oh shoot, I always get these mixed up. What's the thing before the wedding? Rehearsal dinner.
Yeah.
At like the rehearsal, I always get it mixed up with the reception. I don't know why. But at our rehearsal dinner, like after everybody had kind of eaten and stuff, your dad said some things, and also like I said some things. And I remember telling everybody that was there, like, this will be the only times in our life where everybody that matters to us is in the same room.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you weren't there, but that'll be another podcast episode.
I apologize.
But but I remember saying to everybody in the room, like, listen, I love you with my whole heart and there's nothing you can do about it. And that's kind of like what I think that those friends were doing for her.
Yeah.
Like in that race at that point, like, listen, we love you and there's nothing you can do about it. You're stuck with us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, if memory serves me correctly, like I think she had tried to repair kind of her friendship with Jern, right? Or Jaren. Like they had gone to dinner and she had talked about like just being friends.
Was he at the race? I don't remember that.
Oh yeah, he's at the very end and he's like, "I love you, Brittany," and I'm just crying. But So it seemed, I honestly, I can't remember at this moment if she, reached out to Seth or Moneybags Martha, but it did show her initiating a friendship with him,
Mm-hmm.
which would lead me to assume maybe there was some positive kind of reconnecting between the other two. They knew where she was going to be. They were there to support her. We don't know if she asked them to show up, but I think that's kind of the cool thing about it is whether she did or if she didn't, they were there, right? And I think it's those moments where you don't have to ask someone to show up. You
I was
just
going to
do.
say it's the benefit of real healthy intimacy
Right.
is you can ask, but there are times where in relationship you can tell the person maybe is having a tough time asking, and so you take that step. You don't
Yeah.
you don't make them do that.
Right. Yeah. Like it's it's something you do because you care. You do it
Mm-hmm.
because you love them and you're so I was going to say in Brittany's situation, I think they were just so proud of her, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like she worked hard, she didn't give up, she kept pushing. Hence the analogy or the theme of a marathon, right? That she literally had different stages in this race of her life that were really great and really crappy or really hard. But she crossed the finish line, right? She had a moment where, what was it, mile 22, which that sounds so long. But she started to struggle, and then it was because she was able to go just a teeny bit further, and she heard and she saw the people cheering for her, like Seth and his husband and kids were there, and then Moneybags Martha was there, and that helped reaffirm her and give her validation and support, which is what we all ultimately need.
Yeah, and what we all ultimately want.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting is it's part of her journey was finding out that that's really what she wanted.
Yeah.
It wasn't just I want to be the center of attention. It wasn't just I want to be
Yeah.
thought of as cool or whatever, but it's like I want real relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Tell me something that you have learned from your clients.
I think there's a lot I could say, but I think when it kind of boils down to it, it's it's the power of persistence. It's the power of authenticity, right? That you may be having the worst day, but you show up, right? With as much as you can give, with as much or maybe little as you can give, right? But you work to be just just resilient and knowing knowing maybe like long term where you want to end up and maybe not having all the ideas or tools or steps that you need in between, but you're here to figure that out. You're here to work on it.
It sounds like vulnerability.
I would say it could be definitely within that realm. I think authenticity and vulnerability go
Yeah.
hand in hand,
Yeah, they hold
right?
hands, yeah.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
authentically and vulnerably hold hands.
Yeah, because if you're being vulnerable, you're being authentic. If you're
Yes.
being authentic, you're being vulnerable because to be your real self, I think we all have a fear inside of us of people
Hmm.
rejecting us if we show who we really are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And so your clients have shown you that that's okay.
Absolutely. Like it may look different on a different day or a different client, but I think overall, like the growth of working on what you want to work on, accepting where you're at,
Mm-hmm.
even incorporating just that mindfulness of this is where I'm at today, right? And kind of accepting I'm here in this moment, I'm thinking this, but I know it doesn't necessarily have to last, right? If you're having like a down kind of day, right? And so just to be authentic and patient and mindful with yourself, that's what I think my clients teach me.
think that's so interesting because I think it's a next level of authenticity or vulnerability. I think the first level is like, how do I get to the place where I can be, quote unquote, this idea that I have of me all the time? But to even say, how do I get there in each moment?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that there's like a temptation that once you kind of establish, all right, this is my identity, you may be tempted to go, I got to be that 24 hours a day, every day of the week.
Yeah.
But even though I am really comfortable in knowing who I am, there's some days where like I can't be me today.
Yeah. I
And I think that that's
feel
still
that.
being true to you, but I
Yeah.
think it's that next level of, you know, no matter who you are in each moment, being
Yeah.
that person.
Yeah. I agree. Like I I think for the longest time I really like prided myself with like I do this, I do this, I get all this stuff done. I'm pretty capable, like I have positive things going for me. And then some days you're just not at your top operating
Yeah, capacity. Yeah.
capacity,
And
right?
the pandemic will definitely show you that if nothing else has thus far.
For sure.
Next,
100%.
which leads to a great question, like what's something that you do to take care of yourself?
Yeah. Um, I think pre-pandemic world that looked really different. Um,
Mhm.
I have a pretty good group of girlfriends that we we have our group text. We are in some nonprofit stuff together, but we also do lunch, right? We like to eat and we like to laugh, and we don't take ourselves too seriously. We're those girls in the restaurant that are loud and are laughing and get the looks, but we just don't care. Now, we don't do that necessarily in the world of today, except I did eat lunch with a friend today, and it was
At a
different.
place like
At a
at
real
a
place, at a real
ooh
sushi place, yes. In the world. Texas acts we just we have the mindset that
you
nothing's
don't
gonna
you don't mess
nothing
with
will keep us
Texas.
down. We don't mess
Yeah.
with don't mess with Texas Corona. Like but with the event of the pandemic and just your world getting turned upside down, um we spent a lot of time outdoors. My husband and I, we bought bikes. We took the dogs for walks. We did a lot of, I guess, activities. I just thought of that Step Brothers line. It's
So
like,
much room for activities.
so much room for activities. But I also, he bought me a little like kind of journal book that was like a 52 kind of list. It's out in the den, otherwise I'd show it to you. But it's like it's a mindfulness activity
You have
of
a
like
den? You are so fancy.
maybe
Wow.
the living room or den, whatever. No, we're really not that fancy. But like it's creating a list of like what are things that make you happy? What are
Hmm.
things that give you purpose, right? And you make a list, and then there's a little question at the bottom like, out of this list, what's the one thing you can focus on this week that you do well, right? And so just getting some more time to be introspective and reflective, I think, has been important in pandemic world. And
Reflection and intention.
yeah, for sure. um and then just I know it sounds a little silly, but like just being out in nature has been really nice because
I don't think
it
that sounds silly at all. Like that, I feel like nature has been taken from us
yeah,
almost in, or at least being outside in the public. And so,
yeah,
um, I think any chance that you have to be physical, be in your body, be in the here and
yeah,
now, ground yourself. I think that sounds.
yeah. Now it wasn't necessarily for weight loss purposes because in pandemic land we all probably gained about 20 pounds, but hey, you know what, it's all right, our bodies were in survival mode.
Yeah, I think a global crisis and trauma, and we've
Yeah.
all been like in hyper aware survival mode for a
Yeah.
while.
For sure.
I think we do the best we can.
Yeah.
I just thought of this to ask you, because you kind of noted the difference between something that you do for you pre and during pandemic. What was it like making that transition and having to find something different?
It was hard. Because I'm an extrovert, because I like being with people. Um, you know, it was challenging. Like, you wanted things to just go back to quote unquote normal, or at least like to see people. And so, yeah, there were definitely days that were harder than others. Um, but I think after a while, you just kind of had to sink into like that acceptance of this is what we are in. And, like I organized a drive-by birthday party for one of my girlfriends, right? Like,
It's
and that
great.
was so much fun. And like,
Yeah.
we had a great time just driving by, and honking our horns. And
We saw one of those from our front porch like not too long ago for a kid, and it was awesome.
yeah, she's like 36, but
Still awesome.
cool, right? Like,
Yeah.
sorry, I shouldn't have told her age. But
Well, you didn't say your name, so I think it's
that's true.
okay. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
true. But just trying to be mindful that this won't last forever, even though we probably feel like it might.
Yeah.
But just taking it kind of moment by moment, and allowing yourself to feel how you feel.
Mm-hmm. So let's say that somebody was listening to our conversation and would love to connect with you, would love to become your client. How can they best get a hold of you?
Sure. Well, first you need to live in the state of Texas. That's important to stay ethical. But you can look up my website. It is Rachel Olshine, which is RachelOlshine.com. Or you can search me on Psychology Today, and my profile is there with my email and my address. My email is rachelolshinelpc@gmail, and I'd love to connect with you.
Boom. I love it.
Love it.
Rachel, thank you so much for coming on again. It's been an absolute blast.
Been great.
Anytime I get a chance to talk with you is great.
I'm just
Rachel, you're the best. I can't wait till round 3.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate your ministry.
Thanks so much for joining me this week in the theater. I'll make sure I save a seat for you and a friend next week. Let's raise the lights, lower the curtain, and say that for this week, the theater is closed.